Hopefully the camera obeys today. Yesterday was going nuts. I had to do like this weird factory reset on or something. Pushed a little pin. It's always a pin device, right? All right, today we're going to review a Kristoff. And I've never smoked one of these before. It was just sitting in the edge of my smoke shop shelf. Let's see. There's a little bit more detail in here. This is the Criollo Matador. It's Criollo. One day I'll learn how to say all this stuff. Now I've got the camera in slightly a different position because the sun's about to come around the corner, and it's a little nippy out here. This is my paint skate ramp smoking jacket. Earlier this year, I don't know why this is so over here. Earlier this year, I painted my neighbor's skate ramp. It took me a couple weeks. It was on this patio. It was just prior to spring, and it was really cold outside. So I just would sit out there during the day and paint and then go throughout the night. It was really cool. We'll get into that maybe. This has a little pigtail on the end. And let's see here. It's got the wrapped end, just slightly wrapped. So the wrapper comes around the end. I always think that's kind of interesting. You know, Brian Glenn, he's all talking about the seams and the veins and all this other stuff. You know, it looks beautiful. That's all I got to say. This just feels really good. Feels very soft. It's been in my Humi for, I don't know, 3 days. But it was very, this is from my smoke shop that really stores things properly. If I'm clearing my throat during these episodes, it's just because I drink coffee with a little bit of sugar in it. Always makes me phlegm a little. I apologize. I need to go sing a song before I do this. That pigtail just came right off. Beautiful. Just refilled my favorite lighter. So let's get this baby going here. Oh, wow. Well, let me just say, wow, the texture of this thing, the pull and the feel of it, it's got this, the very, handmade feel. Like it's really soft and spongy in a really good way. It's like one of my favorite cigars on the planet. This is $12 stick at my local smoke shop. It was like $13, but it's a whiskey stick. You'll see me smoke them and talk about them every once in a while. Just labelless, comes in this brain jar. This is almost the same kind of construction, but I'm not sure what size this is. I would imagine it's like a Toro. This says Dominican Republic cigar. Wow. Not getting a lot of flavors just yet. When they wrap the tips on the end, it's a little bit tougher to get the thing to light properly without getting it to tunnel, because you have to burn this excess wrapper off the edges, and then sometimes you can get the kernel down the center lit first. So I'm just going to see what I can do here. Probably got to put up my hair because the wind's just a little bit too much. It already went out. Let's try this again. I'm trying to pick up on the taste here. There's like a ton of things going on here. This is about a $10 stick. It's about $9.99. Interesting. Super mild at the beginning here. I'm literally going to hold back on what I think I'm tasting here. because I'm tasting several things and I have absolutely no clue what they are. There's obviously a tobacco flavor. It's a slightly snug draw, but again, it's kind of that spongy construction, which I like. I don't know what the deal is. I do like a really easy draw too. I like those, Macanudo type sticks where you just inhale and you bring it down quarter inch. I'm just checking the clouds here because we had some rain earlier today, but I think I'm seeing the last of the clouds. The rain clouds just pass in front of the sun. So if you see the sun come and go here, it should be done here fairly soon with these shadows on my face. The cap looks like with the V cutter, because of the pigtail, it's got a little bit of a wiggly piece of tobacco here. It kind of looks like the end of a hot dog. When they do the pigtail. It's probably best that I guillotine this, but my guillotine isn't that sharp. I need to go and get a little. I gave away a little guillotine because I'm such a V cutter snob. It looks to me like this was a double cap, but it's sort of there's a cap on here, and then there's the sort of the wrap on it. For me, I do like the adventure of different styles of wrappers on cigars. Because there's a lot of gimmicks, as they say. Just to get people to buy a particular cigar of another one. I don't know. It's just an adventure, And again, I forgot to mention in the last review that the other construction anomaly that's an issue, besides a block stick, which is the most dreaded thing, is when you actually have a hole, in your cigar somewhere, and you'll puff on it. Usually it's somewhere down at the end here where the wrapper and the binder didn't just quite do its job, or I don't think I've ever had one due to besides the super cheapy ones, those Cohibas I got. I should have just taken them back because the ends, I remember now, and I see this on CO website, the Cigar Obsession Facebook site, people taking pictures of their cigars that are all cracked at the end, and the Cohiba's pack I got was probably at least 2/3 cracked at the end. And so what I would do is just take my old guillotine, move it up, and just slice the whole end off. But because it was all made with floor clippings, when I got up closer to the center, it was just like, undoing kind of a trash bag of tobacco. Man, it's smooth. It's definitely snug. I mean, I'm now noticing how much effort I'm having to put into pulling something through this. The band is really nice, by the way. Here's where I get into like shiny objects. The band is the same sort of velvet, or it's not really velvet, but it's the cloth band that you'll see on the tips. But this band is made of a nice creamy cocoa color. Very subtle, very nice, and it just looks immaculate on this cigar. I would love to see that become a trend for folks that aren't wanting to go with the standard sort of my father looking, Latin money look. It's like I like the bands that are very fragile. I'm not a big fan of the Padron band, which is the little teeny tiny quarter-inch band. I just feel like for such an immaculate cigar that sells for a decent price, they should come up with something just slightly more regal than what they have. But why do I care? That's kind of stupid, right? It's got a big giant cloud in front of the sun here for a little bit, probably even out the light. So what happens is when I hit this thing with filters, information you do not give a shit about, it depends on where the light was versus where the light is. If the filter tries to adjust itself. So if you see me get to a point where you can't even see my mouth move, but you see my sunglasses, so where did I check the clouds? I'm going to be, this camera's still acting up, so if the edit seems a little strange, It's just a little strange. I checked the clouds before I started this thing, and now it's like, it's weird how out of thin air they're like, hey, we're here. How'd you like a storm? We'll get this baby filmed no matter if I have to hold the thing in my hand or not. I think this is going to be a fairly long burn, so I sure as hell hope this camera can hang on for decent level segments. What's happening is my camera is actually just arbitrarily stopping the recording, telling me something about it needing to update. I've used this thing for hundreds of hours, and I do not know what's going on. I've cleaned the thing out internally, reset it, and then I recorded myself for several minutes yesterday. It seemed to work okay, so we'll see what happens. This is the most difficult cigar to come up with a taste on. It almost tastes like it's infused with something, but it's not. I think that the gist review at this point is it's very, very nice, sort of a medium body, mild. It's not quite like even the JMs I did yesterday, where I could definitely start to taste three or four things collide. It's just very smooth. That's the cool thing I can tell you about it right away. I don't know what's going on. Big old cloud out there. So California, it just doesn't rain that much. And I've lived here since 1987. And I'll definitely tell you that when I first moved out here, I was stunned at how absolutely clear sky this place is. At least until the late 90s when planes magically started leaving trails in the sky forever that expand into what we recognize as clouds these days. These babies are big, fluffy clouds, deep gray, full of water. And the stuff's coming from this way. So if you see me looking over here, I'm just trying to see what's going to break this way. But yeah, this place would be, there's something called June gloom, and it really starts, honestly, you get this haze. I lived in Ventura County for the first 3.5 years, and Ventura is, Los Angeles is in this bowl, with most of the southern region fairly smooth, but there's this whole band of mountains around it, and like you have the San Bernardino Mountains when you go out towards Arizona, and then as you go north towards Ventura County, up the 405 to the 101, you end up going over what's called the grade, and there's the 5 version of it as well. There's just a lot of little mountains that you have to go over to get to the first kind of smooth region, which is honestly right when you come down into Camarillo, California, is when you sort of the heart of Ventura County. You come into there and you'll finally get a reprieve. And the view, actually, something called the grade, when you take the 101 north, you pass what's called the 23, and it's heading into the desert, but you just keep going the 101 north, and you'll go up this grade, and you've kind of been going up the whole time, right? When you hit the grade in the middle of the night, it is unbelievable looking because you're going to look down onto Camarillo, Oxnard, Ventura all at once. And so you're going to probably be staring out, 10 miles of city lights, and it is just phenomenal, right? There's a beautiful tobacco flavor in there. I think it's just, right now, it's a massive leather at this point. I can't really put my finger on anything else. The retrohale doesn't seem to enhance it any further, but I mean, it's beautiful. The construction so far, even with my wonky light, is utterly perfect, right? I thought I might just go on a little bit about Los Angeles as long as this video camera will continue recording here. Because there's a lot of you around the world, and, you watch television, and there's a lot of misnomers. To finish my story about the clouds, is that around September, October, you start getting this marine layer that just won't go away. And what's strange is it's sort of between that grade and Ventura. You'll just look up in the sky, and there's just this body of clouds, at least it used to be. And it just moves in on a particular day and just sits there forever. It's crazy. Wow. It's weird. It's like the finishing taste is almost instantaneously gone. Just the slightest hint of tobacco, and I'm seriously thinking the only finishing taste I've got is the buildup over every one of my pulls, every one of my exhales. So in terms of ultra mild, it's a little bit stronger than a Macanudo in terms of body, because it has a more grittier tobacco kind of residual flavor. Holy cow, I got this big cloud coming over. I just got my computer over here. I just don't want it to get rained on. So if you see me bolt, this camera can be in the water, which is kind of interesting. So like I said, I here in the rain, and supposedly the camera can take it. And I don't know if my tripod can take it. But yeah, this place used to have so few clouds that I would actually write home or when I'm talking to someone, I used to tell them, man, this place has no weather, you know. And the weird thing was when I first moved out here, like literally the first day I got out here, it was like August 19th, 1987. I put my stuff in this room that I had arranged before I came out here from Kansas, and all of a sudden a storm moves in, lightning, torrential rains. Like it would be considered a heavy rainstorm from the Midwest. And being from Kansas, you know, we got tornadoes and massive storms. And so I'm sitting there going, oh, right, you know, this is going to be cool. I got California palm trees and storms and beaches and Los Angeles and da-da-da-da. It was probably a good 10 years before I ever saw anything like that again. And I was in the Bay Area when it happened. Saw some pretty damn good storms in the Bay Area. Yeah, it's tobacco and massive leather. And I want to say I can't taste something else. It's just those two. But man, are they beautifully and it's almost like a sweetness too. It's like a sweet leather. You know, every kid has taken something leather. You know, the first, or my father brought home the first leather jacket back in the 70s, this big, you know, brown leather jacket. And I remember just pushing up against my nose and smelling. You know, it's like smelling the crayons when you're a kid. It's a really deep, beautiful leather taste, and almost that sweet leather taste. You know, and some smells they're kind of savory, salty. You know, until you get a lot of them in your nose. It's a bit like here's a random one for you. When you live in the Midwest, there's skunks. And skunks are obviously the most sour, putrid smell. It comes out of the ass of an animal. But if you have one crawl underneath your house, and it sits right underneath your house, and it just sits there and sits there, aside from getting a migraine from the smell, which is unbelievable, because it happens, it gets sweet. After a while, it will get sweet in your brain. It's so bizarre. Maybe that's what they smell. Maybe they think they're like Pepe Le Pew. They're just like, smell my sweet ass, baby. So, so Los Angeles, it's interesting. I've seen it go through a lot of transformations since I got here. And honestly, LA's doing pretty damn good. When I first got here, the 405 was an odyssey of traffic jam. And it actually was still massive, but it's a little more massive now. And I don't know what's gone on, whether or not some of the other highways inside LA's actually made things a little bit better. But the weird the weird one for me was I spent 10 years in the Bay Area, or probably more than that. Let's see. Yeah, almost 12 years, I guess. There's a couple like half years in there. I remember the first day I landed here in SoCal, and I was in like the Ventura County, which is, Los Angeles, Southern California is really, besides San Diego, which is sort of its own little thing down there. You have Ventura County, Los Angeles County, LBC, Long Beach County, and Orange County. And that's sort of the four counties that stack up on each other. You could take Santa Barbara, too. But then I sat on a sofa at this house I was squatting a room in. I was working for Jim Hall Jr., the son of the famous Formula One race car driver. It was weird. I won't reveal his address, but his racing number was 65, the son. And so he bought a house that was literally 65 of the street that we were on, which was kind of funny. And he and his buddy, who was a geologist who worked on oil platforms, bought this house mutually. And I guess the geologist came in one day and said, I'm about to get married. He's about 29 years old. And he goes, I'm about to get married. You're going to have to pack up and go. And I was about a month and a half into my stay. And I managed to find a really cool place to stay. And I cut the guy $500 back the other way, which for 87 was a shit ton of money for a little room. He was very thankful. It's very snug. Very, very snug. And so far, just the same old thing. Just a really mild smoke. Would have been nice if the sun had remained out. A big, giant cloud going over. So I'm watching the news, and I was just watching TV in general, doing some illustrations. I saw an advertisement come up for the Bay Area, and I didn't know that when in the Midwest, you don't know anything about San Francisco area calling itself the Bay Area. So that was where it kind of was there. And it was just like this travel advertisement, right? And the weird thing is that its entire pitch to me was how much it's just as good as Los Angeles. Now, obviously, I'm regionally in Los Angeles, so there might be an advertising idea that appeals there. But I just thought right away, I was like, that's really weird. These folks can't have their own identity. They have to take a shit on L.A. to have an identity to me. They can't just say, we have stuff that no one else has. Come and take a look, right? It's just weird. Had no idea 4 years later I'd be living up there. But I didn't think much of it. Went on with my life in SoCal, and I got here at the absolute perfect time. I got here, I guess a couple of years earlier when it might have been a little bit better, but, Los Angeles was blowing up. The software industry was blowing up. I didn't have to go through some of the trials and tribulations of the programmers that came before me, And I got really lucky because I knew how to program at 18. I knew how to program way before that, but I just show up and I could immediately jump into my job, which was cool. So I did 2.5 years, got in the video game business and a bunch of other stuff. But then the recession came and popped the bubble, and I had to go to the Bay Area. And actually, I'd gotten a job. I went on an interview. I have this weird thing. I get out of the jobs I go on interviews for. It's almost annoying, but Norton Utilities was not quite purchased by Symantec at the time. And I went down to Malibu, and they were renting this beautiful office in this, if you just look up Malibu coastline, and if you find this sort of futuristic Art Deco white building, it's really tall on the beach. That's where Norton, I think, might even still be to this day, but that's where they were at the time. And I went down and interviewed and got the job. But the girl I was dating at the time went to Symantec and up in the Bay Area and got the job in San Jose. Or actually, it was San Jose? San Jose, Sunnyvale, somewhere up there. Right next to Apple, the Apple headquarters, before they built Infinite Loop. And I was dating her, so I was like, okay, I got to make this choice. And I was getting into acting and just writing and stuff. And it would have been like sort of a a cool destiny in Los Angeles at the time, or a cool destiny getting my technical skills really high. So it was almost like that, the super risky career here in Los Angeles that may not go anywhere, or the absolute beautiful fallback careers that I got out of the Bay Area. So in the end, I'm definitely glad I went to the Bay Area, but it was a weird place. It was just really strange. From the culture that I had here, all right. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt this with review stuff here, but there's some weird, twangy, sweet flavor that is sort of touching the taste. It's when I'm pulling and when I'm mixing that smoke in my mouth and before I let it out. There's not a tremendous amount of smoke off this thing. Like you can't really see the foot smoke too much off this thing. It's a very conservative woman. Let's invent some metaphors. This cigar's got a chastity belt on her smoke. So if you put your mouth on her, she's willing to give up a little bit of the old smoky, but until the end, she's like, nope. It just stops. I get done and it stops, right? That JM cigar that I did, that $2.50 one, man, you remember that gigantic cloud that was coming out. And yes, it is a little more windy today, but it's not that windy. Like, hopefully this one big cloud goes over and we're good. But I get up there. Actually, let me paint the contrast of the two worlds for you. And this was what was really weird to me. I come from the Midwest where people know everybody. A little tiny town, like I keep saying all the time. And everybody knew everybody. And you drive down the street and you're getting exhausted waving to everyone down the street. Because if you don't, you might get in trouble. Why'd you wave at me, man? Pardon me. And so when I went to SoCal, it was like the place was a family. You know, I show up to work. I'm 18 years old. They let us drink beer and stuff, which was kind of cool. And so I'm sitting there drinking a beer on my first day. I remember, and I'm getting into Microsoft Word on a Macintosh computer, and I never had access to a Mac. It's 1987. These things are $3,000. I lived in the Midwest where no one makes any money at all, and so I'm just drooling over this machine. I am going through every piece of software that's on this thing with the floppy, the system floppy and the app floppy and all that stuff. And remember my boss, this cool ass dude named Russ. He comes up and he just cracks a beer of his own. In fact, I think he might have been the one that offered me the beer first. That's why I won't say his last name. Awesome human being. He still works for the company that bought us out, I believe. But he sits down just like this father figure, this buddy of mine, my uncle or something. He sits down and just says, hey, man, so tell me about yourself, man. And we just start talking, and he gets to know me, and this is where I learned how to be a manager from these amazing managers that I had. And that's nice. Again, it's just leather and tobacco. Nothing else showing up so far. Ash is holding on really well. Seems to be pretty densely packed, so we'll just let it fall on me however that happens. Got my smoking jeans on. Got my smoking jacket on. Hopefully those clouds stay lightened up there. But anyway, we would work and we'd party, and we'd go to our boss's house, who had this just awesome dual level pad. He had this, it was over in the coast, and he had like a big pool table downstairs, and you go upstairs and there's like this spiral configuration that almost hovered over the bottom floor. So you had this like spiral command center made of wood, kind of being I-beamed out of the ceiling. Off in one area is his bedroom. But he would just have just like this fantasy setup of all these crazy computers and printers, and it was just amazing. So I went over there, and we would just constantly be this family. And everyone in the company would hang out with each other, and people dated each other, married each other, and probably had 2 or 3 weddings by the time I got out of there. It was just sweet, and everybody cared about everyone, and everyone was part of everyone's life, Absolutely, just so you know, to speed up, this is the way Southern California does it, And the networking was fantastic. We had actors who would run off, and they were featured extras in soap operas. And so we had like one of our tax experts. He was a featured extra in so many soap operas, it was crazy. And so we'd see him on television, and then we'd go to work, and we'd see him on television, go to work, and it was just cool. And he just, no big deal, not a big show off or anything. Remember, he and his wife invited my girlfriend and I to go play. It's called volleyball. It's kind of like a racquetball meets volleyball. So you're inside this volleyball court with walls, and you play off the walls and stuff. It's really cool. So in the video game industry, it was even more lovey-dovey, and people just taking care of number one, taking care of number one and taking care of you, networking together. A little more smoke. But that journey was a complete setup in contrast to the Bay Area. I moved after my girlfriend because she had the higher paying job. So I told Norton, sorry, I can't take that job. I'm going to go north. Luckily, about a month later, I didn't take that job. 32 people were laid off from that company because Symantec bought them. So I probably would have joined them and lost my job. Now, I would have had a problem finding another one, but still, I avoided that one. But I went up north. I didn't have a job. And I found a job within a couple months, and that's where I got into database engineering for corporations. But I remember my first day there at this new job. Everyone's in this company is not talking to each other. And it's probably about 70 people at this organization, and they just won't talk to each other unless it's absolutely mandated business conversation. And I started the same day my manager started, and his assistant, which is his wife's niece or something like that. It was really weird. Total nepotistic hire from the very beginning. Sweet tobacco. Still the leather's right on top of it. And I don't think there's anything else going on here. So very, very mild stick for $10. We'll see what happens here. And I made the cardinal mistake of suggesting that we go hang out after work. And I said, hey guys, you want to hang out after work? Here I am, this Southern California, beach boy coming in. And the looks I got on these people's faces was like I wanted to, sleep with their daughters. And their daughters are all minors, It was the most disturbing, antisocial environment I had ever been in my life. And I soon learned you simply don't hang out with people in the Bay Area. You don't do it. And I lived there 12 years, right? Now, you can date people and then get into their social circles, but then you'll find out that they have these tiny, cliquey thing of friends, and it was just really, really strange. And it was about 91 to 2003, end of 2002. So that's a number, kind of the span of years I was there. And I watched the Bay Area go from being lightly populated with its indigenous population to utterly exploding with the internet surge, where everyone and their mother was coming in from every domestic, what I call domestic immigrants, are people from all the other 50 states coming in to get money and send it home or whatever. And immigration actually wasn't that bad. Wasn't that much, foreign folks trying to apply for jobs. In fact, the only folks that really had the skill set when they walked in the door were your Indians would come in with pretty good skills, and so we could hire them. But even the Asian population struggled to come in with the skills that we needed right away. But it was just a really bizarre juxtapose of warm, sweet, inviting, networking. No dream is too big. In Southern California, you tell somebody, hey, like I came here as this goofy kid, and I said, look, I want to really get into writing. I never imagined screenwriting being my thing, but It's just, I think I got a little bit of cocoa there at the last second. So far, the ash is great, and it's sort of a windy day, but that thing is packed extremely tight. It's amazing. Ah, there it went. Got a little bit of a hot kernel on my foot there. Got my flip flops on. It's warming up now, thank God. Looks like the clouds are now chilling out. There's going to be some pretty good sun, which unfortunately is casting that shadow on my face. But yeah, so there was never a lack of sweet people. It's just, like I was going to say here, in Southern California, when you said you wanted to be a movie star, a writer, a director, a rock star, everyone was on board immediately. It was like, sure, dude. And I know this person, I know that person, I know this person, and we'll get you connected. And it really was amazing to have whatever your skills were immediately was pushed up to put your money where your mouth is sort of world. It was like, okay, you want to do this? All right. You say you want to play the guitar, you want to sing or whatever. Here's the mic, here's the stage, here's the band. Show up and do what you got to do. And you're like, oh my God, I got to really go get my skills together, right? What I found on the Bay Area was that it's exactly the inverse. And I'm not sure where it is today, but it's definitely the most ridiculously expensive place for, I think, more hassle than anything else. But it was sort of a dog-eat-dog world. And unfortunately, the Bay Area is so packed full of immigrants that, not foreign immigrants, but just people from the United States, that I think that they come and they fear that you're going to win and they're not going to win. And so everybody sort of knocks you down. It's really strange. But the weird thing is Los Angeles is built out of the same DNA, or sort of the same the goal of, I want to succeed. And there are pockets of people, there's pockets of jobs that are very coveted. Like if you get at the top of the film industry, there's very few positions up there at the top of that pyramid of jobs, right? And so people know that if they mess around or they make a mistake, they're going to lose that position potentially for the rest of their life. So they are very protective. They don't want to say, oh, here's my seat, take it, But aside from that, which is very minimal around here, there's plenty of stages. If you can write a great script, you can write a great script. If you can do something, you can do something. But up there, I can't say that in 12 years, roughly, I don't think anyone ever really networked, hey, this person, that person, this person. Even within Electronic Arts, where I worked for the better part of 9 years, and I did a lot of consulting for the first 6 years, so sort of off and on. I was doing things with other companies. There wasn't like a big, hey, come over here and work for us and let's do this and we're all going to network together. It was sort of like passive aggressive. I'm going to try to fight you out of this position upgrade that you might have. It's really strange. And a lot of kiss asses would get to keep their jobs, and the people who did the work didn't get to keep their jobs. It was sort of the mantra of the video game industry. It's really strange. Because the video game industry used to be built out of people that played games. And then eventually the white collars came in and replaced to take care of the millions and gazillions of dollars that these companies were making. And I think to their surprise, the company would look to them and say, okay, what do we do next? Mr. White Collar. A person who's never played any video games. And so the person would try to buy a couple games and play them in their living room or watch a little kids play. And then they would just try to come up with ideas, and it was just, always a traffic accident when that happens. No transitions. I can't taste any transitions. The balance between the tobacco and the leather is still very solid. The construction's been just immaculate. When the ash fell off, it really fell off. It was almost like the cherry fell off, but it didn't. And so, don't know that I would buy this again. I definitely would smoke it again, but I don't know if I would pay $10 for it. And the snugness is a little annoying. It's just a little too snug for me, and I don't know if being in my humidor for a little bit longer would lighten that up a little bit. Um, I think it's usually up to being densely packed. But we'll see what happens here. It definitely is nice and snug. So far, the smoke is really cool. But you can definitely sense this is pretty consistent here. I don't see the old-fashioned... oh, I do. Yeah, this is handmade. You never know. Maybe a machine made this. I don't know. No, but this was made by hand. Better do an extra pull on that just to get it to light up again. Okay, that maybe just gave me something different just then. This is about the time when I need to get in that second, third, and really start tasting some transitions here. At least one other flavor before it boils off here. But I will say this much: the amount of knowledge and people up there in the Bay Area for technology, it's no big surprise. It's Silicon Valley. I managed to work for a couple of people that were just utter geniuses in technology, and it changed my life. As the internet, and because I was there before the internet really took off, when it arrived, I got to create some projects of my own to then ebb into the technology. I always had someone in the office that was like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And there was always someone going, okay, this guy over here knows. Now, they were always grumpy bastards when I tried to get stuff out of them for a while, until my bosses were really cool. But I remember the first time I learned how to code in a language called Perl, P-E-R-L. I was trying to create a chat room online, which eventually became pretty famous off of a website I still own. It actually ended up, I was a Prince fan at the time, and so I created a chat room for Prince fans, and Arista Records actually linked from their website to my site saying, if you guys want to chat about Prince, go here. And my God, the thing exploded. I had to create a U.S. branch and a French branch, and it was usually English or French. But man, these kids pounded the crap out of my chat room. Yeah, I see that kernel sort of fell off there. I'm going to go ahead and give it a good light. But I'll just give you a little anecdote. When we finally got into this, because I was working for this database industry company, and we were just doing our own proprietary front end to a database back end, and we could talk to any database in the world, and the front end could run on any platform that existed. This was pretty cool stuff. And eventually, we needed to get the internet going. You needed to be able to talk internet protocols, and we'd already invented the DAL driver, which turned into ODBC driver. So our dudes knew what we were talking about. But they man, is that snug. It's almost getting more snug as it gets down further. I have not experienced that before. And I'm sure it's just an anomaly of this particular cigar. Kristoff Elite Cuban Taste. Maybe that's why it's a little more monotone. The foot smoke there, I get a little closer to my nose. The wind is robbing me of really ingesting the foot smoke. It's really nice. What's I gotta say here? So my boss, just to kind of give you an idea of sort of the brain trust there. It was time for me to create a bunch of internet packages out of thin air. And he sat me down, and here I am, I know several languages, and I'm doing a little bit of stuff at home, God damn. Son of a bitch just went out. So when the cigar goes out completely, that means that ash you see is all a lie. You can't light the ash. So I always take my lighter and I tap it. And it always reveals a tunnel. So what I have at the end of this cigar is a bowl on the end because it did tunnel, maybe due to the wind. So now I'm going to light the outer rim of this bowl and get this baby going again. Now, I can do this without actually smoking it. Just kind of hit the wrapper a little bit on the outside just to get it started here. Just singe about a 1/4 inch on that thing. Try not to say bad boy. All right, let's see what we're doing here. But he sat me down at his desk, and he's like, all right, I need you to code an FTP package, an email package, a web server, and a web client, and go. As I was looking at him like, what? My boss, who's this great guy, brilliant man. He's actually a playwright. He would actually do plays at Stanford. He would take old Gilbert and Sullivan scripts and rewrite them to be comedies. I remember he did this one called, I think it's called The Judge, something like that. He rewrote it from its original format into a Marx Brothers format, and he actually hired all these guys to play the Marx Brothers. And I mean, the guy lucked out on a level I can't describe. Every dude who walked in that door looked exactly like either Groucho Marx or the rest of the brothers, Harpo. And they, most of them had never seen the Marx Brothers. And so the Groucho Marx guy had never seen Groucho Marx before, and he utterly nailed this role. And I grew up with Animal Crackers and all of their productions. The amount of weekends as a child I sat and watched. Was it Zeppo? I think he's the guy that plays the piano or something. But just watching these guys do their magic, and then I watched them on stage, I was like, holy hell, it's amazing, right? I think I saw that play 4 times in a row. Loved every second of it. But he sits me down at his desk, and he's like, okay, you're going to do all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, It's like I love the adrenaline of absolute terrifying projects that just gets me off like crazy. But he just says to me, he goes, don't worry, it's easy. Tells me how to do an email package. I'm like, okay. I didn't even need to write anything down. He made it so easy for me to understand. I did have a little bit of help on some plugins for the FTP app. The boss that was his boss before, that he replaced, ended up going off creating his own private company. So we sent him a little gig to create us a few plugins for some FTP communication stuff. But sure enough, within like 6 months, I started the year 2006 with almost no knowledge in internet. By June of that year, I'd finished all those products and did a demonstration on stage. It was really cool. But just because of these guys around me who were just utter geniuses that could always explain something very easily. You did learn that the internet was actually, even at its bowels of TCP/IP protocol, was actually extremely easy because the people who invented it, they had a day job, man. They were just like, well, we need to figure out how to send messages back and forth because I got to get this science project going. And they got a guy in Russia who's in the same science as I'm in, so we're trying to trade data, It was very cool. And I watched the interesting thing, just a little footnote. This is like the weirdest cigar review ever, right? There's some smoke. Holy mother. There we go. Any of you have set up an email package at your house, or you've set it up on your phone, you will have seen 2 terms. One's an IMAP email account, where it keeps all your emails on a central server, and then there's one called POP3. And POP stands for Post Office Protocol. And there was a POP2 right when I got into the industry, and POP3 was invented for one reason. It just basically had one feature that made it POP3. And I remember petitioning the people who were inventing it to say, look, I need this command. They were getting the same request from all these other areas. And it was essentially when you got your email on your phone, right, you needed to essentially say, I have to create a thermometer on this phone, a progress bar that essentially says how far we are in the process of getting the mails off the server. So how do you create one of these little progress bars? A progress bar is always related to what are the total number of steps that need to be completed and what step are you on? That's how you create a progress bar, right? 100%, and you're 20%, 30%. So POP3 was invented with one feature, to be able to query the server without actually getting the mail. You actually query the server to say how many mails files are in that directory, and it would give you back the total number. That's what POP3 was all about. And then you could go back to POP2 calls and get the mail out of there. You just keep a count on how many you've actually received since then. Now, technically speaking, you could get a mail while you're fetching mail, and the percentages would be a little bit off, but you just put a little overflow checker in there to say, okay, if at the time I checked, there's 50 emails, but there's 3 more that came in the process of me getting these 50 emails, you just say don't go over 100%. That's it. But that knowledge got me ready for everything else that was coming in the video game industry, because the video game industry was still very single player. You know, you could play in your local computer to yourself, and so all the games had this sort of single player mode. And at most they had a network LAN feature where you could actually, peer-to-peer computers together and play each other head-to-head. And then we got the multiplayer LAN, where one of the computers, whoever started the game, became the server, and everyone else was actually joining the server to play head-to-head. And, the coders did an amazing job before the internet came around. But then we had matchmaking services where we actually had a master internet server, so all the computers go and talk to the master server and figure out who's going to be the master, who's going to be the slave, within this round-robin situation. On the retro hill, the leather and the tobacco come together and make almost a sweet overtone. It is the most pronounced leather steak I've ever had in my life. So if you want to taste leather, the Kristoff is definitely a place to go. Very nice. Again, it's still pretty damn snug. I think this is more like a non-windy summer day steak. Just nothing else, a non-windy day. Because it's, I say that because the foot smoke is very mild. There's nothing wrong with that. But you would, if you like foot smoke bouncing around your nose, which I do, you definitely won't want to smoke this on even a slightly windy day. The clouds finally disappeared here. Fortunately, I didn't pull my I'd have to go way up on my patio here to get out of this thing. There we go. I could probably pull my jacket off. Oh, so yeah, the Bay Area was interesting. It never got more networky towards the end. In fact, as the internet bubble burst, we had everyone running around trying to find jobs, which was so weird. You got the internet is the new thing in the world, and gosh, by the time the bubble burst in 2002, you had still 80% of the companies in the world not on the internet. And so you're like, how are you going to do business if you're not on the internet? We have all these internet professionals running around the world without jobs. And because all the money was rescinded out of investment cycles, people couldn't get the cash to put in their companies to pay these folks. Plus, a lot of folks were paid too damn much at that time because the vicious nature of corporations fighting over employees that didn't know what the hell they were talking about was unbelievable. Right. It's really strange. There's this odd sweetness to it. It's not like a sweet wrapper, like a baccarat or something, but there's definitely kind of a, I don't know. It's nice. It now seems to be burning well too. Maybe I just got past a weird part of the humidor experience. It's still pretty cool, even an inch down past the cherry. So hopefully we got the cherry inverted there. But I want to take this jacket off. But the cool thing for me was that I lucked out in my mid-20s and I learned all this internet stuff and handled pretty large projects. And once Electronic Arts got super serious about the internet, I finally got the job running some coders, like I've said in the past episodes. And then things blew up. And you had these big, giant consulting firms that were trying to, rake in the dough on this internet boom, but they had no employees that knew what the hell was going on. So I got to walk into my late 20s and own it. Just own these huge teams and direct people on how to do things. And I'd already made all the mistakes, and so it was very fortunate for me. But eventually I came back down to SoCal. And here's the interesting thing. I went on complaining about how the Los Angeles was very networky, very family-oriented, very positive. It was like, you want to succeed, I want you to succeed, and so let's make this thing happen. I go to the Bay Area. And the weird thing about the Bay Area, too, is that they were always criticizing L.A. It was unbelievable, the psychosis these people had. And a lot of them had never been to Los Angeles. But they would carry with them these ridiculous catchphrases about how people are plastic. They used to love to say people are plastic. And I'm like, well, what's plastic mean? Does that mean that they say one thing and they do another? Because that's what happens in the Bay Area. It's not what's happening in L.A. L.A. delivers, baby, In fact, L.A. puts your money where your mouth is, and you got to be confident, and you have to have your skills in place to exist in Los Angeles if you're going to run your mouth, But I remember getting my oil changed because I was about to drive down to Los Angeles. And I'm, the guy was small talking to me at some oil change, Jiffy Lube or something. And I'm waiting in line with all these other cars. And the guy's going, well, what's your plans this week? And I said, about to just literally, you're going to change my oil and I'm going to get in the car and drive to L.A. And this kid starts running his mouth about L.A. being a horrible place. And I'm just looking at the guy going, like, in my brain, I'm going, what the hell's wrong with you? Because this shit's happening everywhere in the Bay Area. And I asked him, I said, well, did you used to live there or something? Oh, no, man, but I've been there before. I said, well, you've been there multiple times? No, I went down there one time. People are just plastic. I'm like, oh, what, did you get to the upper echelons of the Hollywood studios where you're talking to some snot-nosed executive assistant who's trying to sleep her way to the top? I mean, like, where are you? Because I don't know where these people are you keep talking about, No answer, no nothing. Just hating to feel superior. They were hating this other region, Consequently, when you watch the, hey, come to L.A. travel commercials, they didn't say, we're just as good as the Bay Area. They just said, we're L.A. Come on down, Just bizarre. But I moved down to L.A. in January 2003 into this house. I was next door eating dinner with a neighbor and his mother, who's my age. The dude was at my age, roughly, within the week. Eating dinner next door. Come on over. That's the LA I remembered. I was like, yeah, this is the way it is. People really are lovey-dovey, nice, networky. And the neighbor actually, for probably the first month, he said, I want you to know all the restaurants and all the bars and all the streets that you need to know. So I'd go to work. Actually, at the time, I was self-employed. But I do my work during the day, and then he'd come get me at night, ring the doorbell, and we get in his truck, and we drive all around Huntington Beach and all these different regions, and he'd say, that's a great bar, that's not a great bar, we're going to go get drinks here. Dude must have taken me to 12 restaurants in the first 2 months. And instantaneously, I felt like this was my home, because these are the people that aren't living in this hate bubble, Not a mention of hate towards anything in the world, No one said, oh, you're from the Bay Area, oh, I'm sorry. None of that. Just, oh, okay, that's cool, man. Welcome. Well, now let's talk about cost of living differences. I'll just say this much. I used to live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Well, at first, I've lived in a ton of places in the Bay Area, apartments and houses, but before I left, I was renting Actually, I was renting a 3-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, man. San Mateo, California, which is a burb 20, 30 minutes south. Whoa. 20 minutes south of San Francisco on a good day. If you didn't have the amazing jam traffic that the Bay Area has. It's let's see. It's 12 years later, folks. It's 12 years later, 2015, right? I moved here in 2003, January. And put this in perspective for you. I got a house. I got a backyard. I got a front yard. I got a 2-car garage. There used to be a jacuzzi here when I got here, but it screwed up, so I had to take it out. I'm 3.5 miles from one of the most gorgeous beaches in all of California. Hands down. Massive, probably a good 1/10 of a mile of sand before you even get to the water. Giant. Beautiful. Keep going down the coast, it's like Monaco. It's like southern France down there. You got the Newport Beach beaches, Laguna Beach, San Juan Capistrano Beach, all the San Diego beaches. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous place to live. I am paying, even after rent hikes over 12 years, which hasn't been much here at all, I still pay at least $350 less a month for this place than I did for that crappy apartment in the Bay Area in 2002. Right? And I am 20 minutes from Los Angeles. A big-ass city with everything I could possibly imagine. I now have gotten right back, over the last 12 years, I've gotten back into all the networking I left back in 91. The music industry, the film industry, the video game industry. I was able to start a company here. We made $6 million. It was like, this is it. This is the place to be. If you have a dream and you want people to be cool and you want to be able to afford to live, and you got skills, you got to bring those skills, man. And I don't give a crap what those skills are. If you can clean a house really well, you can totally survive here. The taxes are, no worse than the Midwest. The Midwest gets taxed to death because they're so. I come from the Midwest, and they're so docile to government taxes. It's weird. Like they don't quite think for themselves in the Midwest. It's actually unfortunate. So they simply go, "Oh, I have to pay more taxes. Oh, okay, that's good." Same old thing, no transition. Second third is exactly like the first. The draw is so snug on this thing, it's almost making my mouth and my throat muscles tired at this point. Yeah, and maybe there's other ones that are a little bit different, but it's not like my whiskey stick, which also has that spongy pack. This is actually a firm spongy pack. Again, the construction, I couldn't say anything better about the construction. I mean, look at that. I've had some faults. I've had this thing go out on me, but no matter how badly I light it, it seems like it's hanging on beautifully. And honestly, the ash has remained pretty good. It's flowering a little bit at the end there because we had to go out a little bit. A little bit of a tap here. Still holding on pretty good. Anyway, this could be the least watched cigar review ever. Just feel like it wants to go out every 5 seconds. I do like this band. I do like the idea of that, whatever this stuff is, it's like some nylon weave. It's really nice. It's like the best part of the cigar so far aesthetically. The end is really holding together. When I cut it, because of the pigtail, I had a little bit of a flap on the cap here. No big deal. no leakage, very tightly put together here. So again, it's if it's your thing, it's your thing. I can't imagine this becoming anyone's preferred stick necessarily. It's $10, and I say $10. The place I buy it is a little jacked. In this area, when you buy cigars, if you go to like one of the bigger malls where there's like Neiman Marcus in there, you're going to be buying a $15 stick where you can get it for $11 anywhere else. This is sort of in the middle. It's about $1 more everywhere you go. And they have they have what they think are specials. And what's funny is where you buy 5 and get 1 free. The amount of smoke shops in Orange County that sell cigars, where they're, again, it's half head shop, or maybe 2/3 head shop, maybe 1/3, pot pipes and stuff, and then the other one's vape, and then the other third is a cigar humidor. No one there smokes cigars. You can't get a single soul to comment on anything. They just say, well, that one sells good. So you can't say, is this full body? Is this good? Is this a short filler, long filler? You can't talk to them about strength or anything. They just don't know. And that's starting to become the trend, People are just terrified of cigars. They don't know what the hell the deal is. They think, again, this is like a pack of cigarettes. They say, there used to be this thing when I started smoking. I would hear this thing about smoking one cigar is like smoking a pack of cigarettes in terms of the amount of tobacco you're ingesting. Oh, okay, maybe. It's because there's barely any tobacco in that chemically, corroded cigarette thing that you're smoking, right? This thing's out again. Holy cannoli. Let's tap every bit of that ash out of there. Really weird. Because the ash has been pretty pronounced on here, it's been pretty thick. It's not like, it's not like it's not really tunneling that much. And, I can't blame the windy day because it's not that windy out. Jeez, I'm going to run out of fluid just getting this thing to finish up here. Of course, when I delight, it starts to get a little crazy. Okay, the review on this, let's see. I wouldn't get this again. Yeah. If I can get to the end of this without relighting it one more time, then maybe the review will go up a little bit. But right now you're talking about a 70 to 75% on my old scale of 1 to 100. And mainly because the draw is just too snug on this thing. And again, I don't know. It's sort of a love-hate situation because I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels in my hand. When it does burn, it's a consistent leather tobacco. There's nothing else going on here. There's no nut. There's no coffee. There's no chocolate in here that I can taste. I don't think there's a coffee. I'll start hitting it a little bit more often. I even drank a giant coffee before I started this review, so you normally would get a little bit of your whatever you just consumed mixing with the flavor. None of that. It just absolutely didn't accent any of those flavors. I don't know. I won't close the verdict on it, but as of this point, we're talking about. I'm gonna go to 70 because it's so snug and because it's gone out like 3 times so far. Again, the ash is very dense, and so the cherry should be pretty well protected, even with a slight breeze that's going on here. But we'll see. Yeah, the sky is blue as the ocean. I guess I picked it right where an I-beam is on this vista here. So I'm going to be probably blacked out for the most part. We'll see what happens here. I'm just squeezing it here. It's pretty much the same pack as it's always been. I'm going to go ahead and pull the band off because right where the band meets itself, it's a little bit hard. I want to see if that's just the band creating a little bit of reinforcement. Watch me pull the band off and the whole thing just turns to like this heavenly thing. Nice band. Came off beautifully. Nice firm piece of... I don't know what the hell this is. It's like a paper, a sort of a textured nylon on the other side or something. I kind of like it. So I'll put that in my pocket for labeling later. See what happens. Let me just pinch this out. Yeah, there's no significant hard spots in here. I probably should have done the old Brian Glenn squeezing earlier to see if I can't free this thing up a little bit. If that works, then I'll back off my complaint that it's so firm. But it's got it. You know what it feels like is there's like a ton of tobacco in here. You know, they really gave you your money's worth in terms of content. There's a decent cloud of smoke. Same flavor, no difference whatsoever. Obviously, the amount of time, my camera's obviously behaving too, which is, I don't know what the hell's going on with this camera. It's been beautiful up to this point. It's like a JVC, it's a GZR30, something or other. When I looked it up online, they're like, oh, it's a Canadian camera. I'm like, what? Cameras have races? What? I think a Canadian's a race, but whatever. It's got national borders, national alliances. It's okay, I'm canceling your recording, eh? Oh, shit. I just rolled that cherry right on my thumb or my finger top there. It's amazing how sensitive the finger tops are. You know, the underside of your hand can take a hell of a lot more. The retrohale really accents the it pretty much accents both sides of the thing, to be honest. Both the tobacco and the leather flavor. I don't want to say it again because it's just me, you know, going in circles here on the flavor. So yeah, Los Angeles has really come a long way. When I first moved here, the air was thick. It was very smoggy and gross. And, you know, even though that, to you guys, you know, if you lived in Ventura, oh, God. The cities are Ventura, Oxnard, Camarillo as the main cities that go up to this grade thing where you have this huge mountain range. And I mean, when you're heading down to Los Angeles from the 101, you end up going this crazy grade, and then right at the very top is a city called Newbury Park, and then there's also Thousand Oaks as you start going down, and then you start going to Westlake, Agora, down into Los Angeles, North Los Angeles, which is where it turns into the 405. But the smog was so awful in Los Angeles, and my uncle went to optometry school here in the 50s, and he was like, oh my God, you couldn't breathe when you went outside. And consequently, he remembered his memory of Los Angeles, because he never came back, was that it was going to always be that way forever. I think that's interesting what happens when you go to the Midwest and you tend to be xenophobic towards the rest of the country. If you don't travel a little bit. My father was always good to take me everywhere in the country. So I would just go, this is America. This is America. This is where, people are different in the South, different in the North, different in the West Coast. I was in my late 30s before I got to Oregon. But yeah, that smog would roll up against all those mountains, and it kept getting locked in the mountains, and eventually it would make it over the grade and spill into Camarillo. And every once in a while, we'd wake up and the air was just gross. And the more you drove into Los Angeles, you just saw this this brown haze, and it was very acidic to your lungs. So you'd breathe, right, and it would just start to, I don't know. It was like you were literally breathing a toxin. You feel like these needle pricks in your throat and your chest, And the Bay Area had the same exact thing when I got to the Bay Area, and they would have like these smog alerts. And then we had the emissions control very soon after that put on all the cars, where you had to put these special, emission control units, about $500 on your car. And then, a lot of these other old cars were grandfathered in, they were allowed to be these farty cars, And what happens in a car is that your pistons, as they're going up and down, you have a bunch of oil in your crankcase down below, and you have all this fuel on top, exploding constantly, right? And there's O-rings on your pistons, and they're made of rubber. And when they wear and tear, and the cylinder itself is banging into each other, the metal wears down on the piston, the metal wears down on the head, and those O-rings die. And so the oil tends to go up on the other side of the piston and fire with the gas, and so your exhaust starts having a bunch of oil pop out of the exhaust, for those of you who don't know. And so that's where you get a lot of these cars that are absolutely gaggy, gross. But now they don't have that anymore. Now Los Angeles hasn't had haze in a really long time, except for now we're getting the haze from China. So the China factories actually have these brown clouds that are going completely across the Pacific Ocean and hitting the West Coast. It's really wild. The other day I was in Newport Beach. Actually, no, I went to Laguna for lunch, and I remember staring out over the ocean at Catalina. And, you could just see the little bit of a brown haze out there. And there's nothing that would create a brown haze from our coast to Catalina, because all the wind's going this way. And so it was definitely that the reports I've seen about, the government's tracking all this crazy emissions, right? All right, starting to hang on to its light now. A little more foot smoke. In fact, maybe twice as much as there used to be, and my poles seem to be putting out pretty good clouds. So maybe the band was choking the thing a little bit too much. That'd be interesting if the band was the thing that was doing it. Maybe there is a reason why they don't use them. It's still snug. I'm trying to think of some type of candy or something where you have to do a pull, because my mouth is sore. Literally, my mouth is fatigued from pulling on this thing. Very interesting. Obviously, it's a long burn, because I've still got that much left, and I've been recording for an hour and some change, right? This will not get watched that much. Yeah. It's pretty good, right? Same amount of wind. Now it's really putting it out. Cool. Maybe that was it. Maybe the band was just literally compressing the center of the cigar. Man, you learn something every day, don't you? Again, that V cutter is just keeping a really nice hole in the end here. Everything's holding together. No visible tar or anything at the mouth point. And again, if you have a cheap cigar, that'll start filling up with little nubules of the tobacco if it's a bad tarry cigar, which this is not. Now it's just starting to kind of get down to a really nice tobacco flavor. I'll tell you what, the CO First Third next to this thing really shows you the difference in tobacco selection and roll technique. Because I took advantage of their Veterans Day special where you could get 2 for $80 with the coupon. It was like CO Flash was the code. So maybe you can still test that out. You go to cigarobsession.com, click over to buy the cigar over at blancocigars.com. Look up the First Third on there and go ahead and try it. CO for Cigar Obsession Flash, just like the Marvel character. And I think you might be able to get that coupon still activated, 20% off. Or I think it's 15 or 20% off, something like that. It's a good deal, no matter what. And I've been smoking those. I won't do a review again because I already did the review, but man, they are just decadent. In terms of the quality of the tobacco flavor is just, it can't be any higher than that. If it is, I want to taste it. Again, this isn't bad, but it's definitely for somebody with huge lungs. I was going to tell you guys, last review I talked a little bit about places to go in Los Angeles, but my camera is acting up so damn bad I lost my train of thought. There are, it clipped one of my, I lost one of my references to the Griffith Observatory. You heard me say it, but you didn't hear me say a couple things that I said where the camera died on me. The Griffith Observatory is right by the Hollywood sign. So if you've never been to Los Angeles, the sign's anticlimactic, but it's still cool, because you see that thing all over everything. When you're in the Midwest or something like that, it's still a very special item to see. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you go up to the Griffith Observatory, which is this absolutely gorgeous, Art Deco looking building. And they have a couple giant telescopes there relative to the day. And they have a cool observatory show that you can see. They have a nice restaurant there. You do have to park on the road up to the Griffith Observatory. So, if you're new, you'll drive all the way up to the top. They don't have any parking up there. I think they have a little bit of valet, but it fills up pretty quick. So what you end up doing is driving back down and finding the first parking space you possibly can. So if you do it on a weekend, if you're here on the weekend, it's going to be a little bit packed, depending on what time of day you go. But it's actually, a nice, and the vista, it's a nice place to go. And the vista is amazing. Once you get up there, your view over Los Angeles is crazy beautiful. And I think it's technically if it's in Hollywood, I would be surprised, but it might be actually, Glendale's on the other side of the mountain. So I don't know if it's considered Hollywood or Glendale. Doesn't matter. The entire approach up to the Griffith Observatory, you can see the sign just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you go up all these streets. All the streets have flower names. It's pretty funny. So that's definitely one to check out. There is a little museum. And this is a little gem for you. It's off of, I think, Culver City Street, I think. Or maybe it's Venice Boulevard. Or Venice Beach Boulevard or whatever. Venice Beach is on the coast, but they have these couple streets that go inland from there. And I think one of them is Venice Boulevard. And I think when you get to Culver City from Venice, which is maybe 3 or 4 miles in, on your left is this really quaint, bizarre little place. I think it's still there. It's called the Jurassic Museum. It's a tiny little building. You would miss it if you didn't know what you were looking for. But look up Jurassic Museum. Again, it depends on who you are as to whether or not this would turn you on at all, but it's got 2 levels to it. And as I understand this, and I had this recommended by a director friend of mine who's a heavy duty intellectual, and he said, you got to go check this out. And I went in there, and you go in, and you have this little countertop where they take your money to go in. It's really inexpensive, maybe $8 a head. A little tiny book collection of the most eccentrically bizarre scientific books I think you'll ever find in any store. And you can sit there for probably 15, 20 minutes just looking at the books if you don't rush yourself. But when you go in, it has this collection of stuff that people back in the 20s and 30s, when they were forming this area within the old Charlie Chaplin days, they just brought a lot of oddities that were in there. And there's some modern things in there as well, especially on the second floor. But they have the first 3D viewing mechanisms. They're from the 1800s. The ones where these what the hell they call them, stereoscope things where you look through. But they've got them fixed into the wall, so you put your face up against the wall and you can see these things in 3D. And the amount of cleverness that they did back in the day, because they had these, viewfinder things that, you used to look through when you were a kid. You put them up to your face, and you used to have these cameras, took left eye, right eye, and then they would expose them into two dual pictures. And remember when I was a kid, my grandmother had one you could just put these things in like a viewfinder. There's left eye, right eye, and it was perfect. It was perfect 3D back in the day. Which is just, how brilliant is that these people would figure out that two-dimensional and three-dimensional sight was possible, and then they industrialized it, which was cool. But they've done some really cool artistic things with that technology way back in the day when they realized, oh, let's take this to an artistic level. So you get to see a bunch of really cool things in that realm. They they at least used to have, and I'm sure it's still there, this exhibit of a guy that actually crafts things in the eye of a needle. And so, the eye of a needle is pretty small, guys, right? The little hole in the middle. This guy would create sculptures inside the eye of a needle. And a lot of it was like Disney stuff and some modern franchises, not like modern Disney, but maybe like Disney in the 50s or 60s. But you look through these viewfinders that are attached to the wall. So you just put your face up to it. And you can see these amazing sculptures in there. But there's all kinds of crazy, weird stuff in this place called the Jurassic Museum. Eventually you finish with the bottom floor and you go to the second floor. And the second floor is a bit of a blur to me, except for one room. The very first room I saw was a cognitive science room, which cognitive science is the science of how we became sentiently aware. Which I think is just super cool, right? And you go in the room, and it's very disorienting because you're like, whoa, sensory overload here. But it was a bunch of experiments that they had invented at some point. It looks fairly modern in the room, probably, I would say, 70s to today, somewhere in that realm. But charts and diagrams and images and objects that really, when you look at them, your brain starts to twist and turn, And the only visual memory I have of this place is that there was a chart on the wall with a bunch of different patterns, checkers and all kinds of different stuff. And it's just twisted enough that your brain starts looking at it and you can just feel yourself thinking to try and comprehend what you're looking at. And that's just fascinating, And what's important about that was construction's really good, man. The pole's just like, it's almost like you took a cigar that's like a Macanudo, which is easy to puff on. You put a kitchen sponge on the end, and you start trying to suck through the sponge, something that would be normally easy. That's what it feels like to pull on this. My mouth is utterly exhausted. I'm not going to talk for the rest of the day. You're like, yay! This is a labor of love. Jeez. I just feel like I have to get down to at least where my fingers are before I can end this, because who knows, maybe unicorn farts will come out of the last part of this, right? But these cognitive science museums, and there's usually like a little annex to any sort of like modern art museum. There's, by the way, the museums in the Bay Area, if nothing else, are fantastic in most cases until Yoko Ono shows up. Yoko Ono is for me the definition of artistic void. Yeah, it's like if there's any brilliance to this woman is that she's figured out how to say nothing within something. It is unbelievable how shallow and amazingly flat this woman's mind is. It's unbelievable that she was able to captivate one of the brilliant musical minds of John Lennon. To each their own, right? I got these wasps that are trying to live in this environment. It warmed up for about a week, and the wasps thought, "Oh man, let's make some nests." And now they're like, "Whose idea was this?" Consequently, I can't figure out how these insects survive a season. How do insects, like a wasp, which needs a nest to gestate its eggs, how does it live dormantly anywhere between a season? That's what I don't understand. They come in from Miami on some late night flight or something. Okay, at this stage, which is very common, we're now no more leather that I can really taste. If it's there, it's way down to about 10%. And now I'm just getting tobacco. Its tar level is slowly ramping. Pepper, I probably should have said. Now think about the pepper is that ring in your mouth. When you're done. Again, it's like you're taking black pepper and you splash your mouth with it and then you blow it out. Would be a teeny tiny amount for a cigar, but definitely has a hint of pepper kind of ramping up here. So we'll see what happens. I would think that someone might actually taste this or smell this off of me later, out of my breath, because it's definitely getting kind of heavy. Got to do my broadcast shirt sit tuck thing. Maybe I should talk about my shirt. Shirt says the Rat Experience. So one of the bands I've been a little bit involved with is the old 80s rock band Rat, which I've been a huge fan of since high school. And I like Rat for one reason, is that their music is very original. What do I mean by that? A lot of the 80s rock bands were original, for sure. But I like the riff quality of Rat. When they play, like the live versions of Lay It Down, it's just phenomenal. But they just had a really unique catalog. The song Round and Round has this incredible pause before their hook comes in. If you ever listen to Round and Round, they're versing up to this hook where they say round and round, but before the hook actually occurs, there's this vacuum sound effect where it's sort of like it just kind of, you feel it coming, and then they kind of reverse this synth or something. It's not really a synth, but they do this really cool reverse void just before it goes round and round. I just thought that was an inadvertent moment of brilliance on their part. I don't think it was. I talked to Bob, who's the drummer, and he was like, "Oh, well, we just did it." I was like, "That's brilliant." He wasn't kind of aware that was something that turned me on about the song, But that band used to be together, and when I met Bobby, they were touring quite a bit, and they'd been off and on, because after the 80s collapsed, everybody was kind of like, what are we going to do for money? And it's a bunch of good guys that simply just can't get along anymore, which is unfortunate. And they lost their initial lead guitar player, which used to call him King Crosby. He's the big, giant, blonde-haired guy. If you see him in the 80s, he, as the story goes, he got hooked on heroin by hanging out with Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. And, of course, Nikki doesn't like to think that he was the one that introduced that drug. And Nikki, because he survived his addiction to heroin, when his buddy got strung out on it, and ends up dying of an overdose. What ended up happening was he got AIDS from the needles, sharing needles with people. This Crosby guy, and he was a big sweetheart, man. This guy, from everything I know about him, I never met him, but he was just a gentle giant. Everyone called him the gentle giant. Anytime you see an interview with him, he was just a big sweetheart, you know. And he helped pioneer all those sounds that you hear from Rat. And in the 2000s, he ended up contracting AIDS, and who knows when it started. People ripped off a lot of stuff out of his house, and everything I'm telling you is in a book you can get that I edited together called Tales of a Rat. Just go to bobbyblotzert.com. You can get the book on there. I have to say, this book is amazing. Like, when I first read it, it was not in its edited form because we needed to get it out the door. So I read it probably about 4 times. And then we added some new sections and edited some stuff together. And I laid out the whole book, and we did this self-publishing thing, which is actually sold extremely well. People love it. Everybody who gets into it loves it. You don't have to be a Rat fan to love it. It's not all about Rat. It's about the 80s of music. And because Rat and Motley Crue were best friends, the journey that Bobby Blotzer had through this era was phenomenal, you know. There we go. God, finally. But you'll hear stories about AC/DC, about the Rolling Stones, about Bon Jovi, about Quiet Riot. He covers everything. He covers just everything that went on in the 80s and then after, and the whole psychosis that everybody went into in the 90s, you know. But in the early 90s, you had Rat signed a big deal where everyone got a huge advance. I think it was about $3 million that was distributed among I guess it's like 5 people. And then the lead singer, Stephen Pearcy, just got to the end of his rope, and Stephen is a sweet guy, honestly. He's a little strung out on booze and stuff right now, but he's a nice guy, and he's so nice he's impressionable, in my opinion. I think he gets attached to managers who convince him to go get aggressive with his bandmates, and it just never works because he's coming in the door asking for a disproportional amount of services and stuff. The money never really changes. Everyone has always been paid the same amount of money, and no matter who owns the band or owns the name, everyone gets paid the same amount of money, same amount of royalties, so no one ever gets screwed in the music side of things. But he jumped out of this deal and left the record company having given this upfront cash to everyone, which is a portion of the $3 million. And everyone bought homes and bought assets, and then they were litigated by the music company to give it all back. Of course, right? They didn't make the album. They didn't tour. So that caused a lawsuit, which was awarded to the band members. But of course, Pearcy doesn't have the money to give it back, so it just sort of sat out there. And it's still like this lawsuit that any one of them could go after the money. If Pearcy won the lottery, they could go after him and get the cash. Right? This is all in the book, so I'm not revealing anything secret. I have to say, the book has got some of the most incredible stories about these guys hanging out and going to Catalina, and I'll just give you a couple little things. It's like a $19 book. If you want Bob to sign it, it's like $25. But you have Bobby Blotzer, who's the drummer of Rat, Tommy Lee, who's the drummer of Motley Crue, and one of the Def Leppard guys, who I believe is a guitar player, but maybe it was the drummer. I'm not sure. But they all go out to Catalina to rent jet skis and have a good time on a weekend, right? So Bob has his boat. He always has a boat, and he takes them all out there, and they're going to rent the jet skis. And Bob's been there a million times, and he knows the people behind the counter most of the time. But the funny thing is that particular day, the mother, who's an older woman, completely devoid of any knowledge of who's a rocker or whatever, sees these long-haired guys come in to rent jet skis. And she's concerned because they look like, in her brain, they look like degenerates, right? Somehow they got to Catalina, but they don't have money. It's weird. But they're asking to rent jet skis, and this woman won't give it to them. She's like, I don't know, this doesn't look right. And I don't know how she verbalized that, but she basically told him, I don't think I can rent these to you. And of course, Bob's like standing with his buddies. He said, this is a great place to go. We're going to rent jet skis. It's going to be great. Now this woman's denying them jet skis simply because of what they look like. And these guys are very wealthy at the time, of course. And so it ended up kind of going back and forth until the son of this woman came out. And of course, he is utterly shocked. He's looking at 3 mega stars in front of him. And he's like, Mom, go over here. Go over here. These guys have plenty of money. Just relax. And he rents them the jet skis, and they have a good time together. But it's all these wild stories about what they did. And, like it would be Bob would go to an AC/DC concert where they were performing here in Los Angeles. Of course, he runs right backstage and talks to the guys. And then half of the band goes on his boat, and they run up and down the coast of Los Angeles in the middle of the night on this boat. Just these, and what they did, and just a lot of the crazy stories. The Rat's gone through this thing, and unfortunately, my buddy, Bobby, he's taken a lot of blame in the last couple of years because they don't tour, or haven't toured. They're touring now, but they haven't toured with the band because the lead guitar player that's left, Warren DeMartini, he's sort of being like Stephen Perry, the lead singer of Journey. When Stephen Perry got done touring with Journey, he just decided he didn't want to tour with them anymore. He's like, I don't want you to ever tour with Journey anymore. Put the catalog to bed. It's over. You're not allowed to do the songs with any of the lead singers because I don't want to do it. Totally unfair, right? And Bob's like, what, are you kidding me? We still have at least 10 years of life left, competitively speaking. The Rolling Stones are hitting 70s, and they're still going like crazy, right? And Warren just pulled out and just didn't want to tour. And Warren's big thing was he didn't want the band to ever drink alcohol because alcohol had raped his family in a really bad way, and he had dried everybody up. And he just didn't want it on in the band at all. And so Stephen Pearcy is struggling with getting on the wagon. Bob doesn't drink that much anymore. Of course, he has this reputation of being a big drinker because of the 80s and the 90s. But Bob's totally chilled out his thing. And so I got involved and tried to write their code of conduct and some of their bylaws to regroup the band to the point where everybody was okay. And we actually got to a point where everything was balanced. Everybody was in, like, it was down to the time of day that they were allowed to consume any alcohol. Physically, were you allowed to consume it on the bus? Were you able to drink anything before the concert? And as Bob says in his book, he likes to drink a few Coors Lights. And to a grown man, a Coors Light ain't gonna do nothing, right? But he likes to drink a few before he goes on the stage. It's almost like his mojo gets kind of put together by meditating, and because drumming for these bands and any role you play in a band is huge because you cannot make mistakes on stage. But when someone actually just wants to spite a situation, they make up a bunch of faux excuses why they want to spite the situation. And many of you have experienced this where you satisfy all those exceptions. You're like, okay, I won't do those things. Now let's go. And then all of a sudden the person who's trying to gank everything is struggling because all they want to do is piss on everything. And so this is what ended up happening, where Warren simply didn't want anyone else to play the Rat catalog. He's sitting up on his hill in his hillside house, and he's just wanting to sit there for the rest of his life. And so the reason why Rat hasn't been on tour for the last 4 years is exclusively due to Warren DeMartini creating all these faux excuses why the band can't tour. But he won't say anything to the fans. So the fans are going, why the hell isn't this band touring? And the only one saying something is Bobby. And because Warren has so pissed off Pearcy's like, screw this band, I'm never touring with this band again. And that's not coming from Pearcy's opinion of Bobby, it's because of Pearcy's opinion of Warren. But he won't say it. He won't say it in public. And now it's kind of all been revealed. And there's some good news as of this year. Finally, when you're part of a corporation of any kind, your fiduciary responsibility is to generate profit. So if you form a corporation around a rock band, your duty to the corporation is to get that band to make new music, so thus a new record, and then tour that new record along with your legacy catalog. That is your purpose. That is your most minimal fiduciary purpose. And because Warren has thrown away millions of dollars worth of touring money, they had Motley Crue and Poison say, "Brat, come open for us." They had Black Sabbath, I think, at one point had a single show at least where Rat was invited to come play. These are, I don't know what the gross would be, but it would be a lot of money. And that's not the merchandising. That's not the injection of new records, old records selling through iTunes. When someone remembers how good Rat is, they go buy the albums and that kind of stuff, right? So tons of money just thrown down the drain. Now, again, everyone has a lifespan. These guys are not spring chickens anymore. And so Bob's like, I love to play, and I love my fans, and I love our catalog. I think we have something unique to share, and we're not allowed to do it because this one guy's screwing everything up. So Bob actually, this was all released information, so I'm not giving away any secrets here, but Bob finally said, screw this. I'm going to have a board of directors meeting, which is a requirement of every corporation once a year to have a meeting. And we're going to resolve this. And Warren, because he knows that he would lose any argument with trying to keep the band out of circulation, waits till the 11th hour, a few hours before the meeting, and says, I don't want to meet at this location, which is our standard bylaw location to meet. I want to meet at this other location. Consequently, he picked a location further away from his house. And they said, no, you can't do that. It's not in the bylaws for you to suddenly demand a new location. This is where we meet. This is where the corporation was set up to meet. And so Warren, in his arrogance, doesn't show up. So Bob just goes, okay, fine. All of your voting shares are now turned to dividend shares, and you're now the vice president of guitars. Boom. You're out of the picture. And I own this corporation in terms of voting and where it goes. Thus, he owns the name Rat by himself in terms of where it goes and what happens. But just prior to that meeting, there was a tribute band in Las Vegas, and they did, I can't remember what they called themselves, but they were a Rat tribute band, and they had all the catalog locked down, and they were all a bunch of good looking guys, really fit. So you're not talking about a bunch of pot-belly guys, trying to play old songs. You're talking about a really tight-looking band who gets along great. They're gentlemen to each other constantly. And I guess something happened where the drummer fell out of the circulation, so they called up Bobby and said, how would you like to play the drums in our band? And we'll just make a tribute band to your band, and you can help label us a little deeper into the Rat franchise. And he's like, I like it. Let me come see if you're any good. So he goes to Vegas and plays with them, and he calls me on the phone. He's like, dude, this band is awesome. He goes, this is the band I always wanted to be a part of because these guys are gentlemen. They get along. They're very polite to each other when they have differences and how to realize a particular song. And so he creates this brand called the Rat Experience because he hadn't had this meeting yet. And so they had a couple concerts as Rat Experience, and the videos went online on YouTube. And everyone who's naysaying this experience because they want the real band to tour. And of course, Bob got up to the point where he's just like, I can't deal with the real members because it's really just two members that are left. And Juan Crucier, who I've talked to, he's a great guy. They just can't get along. It's just that simple. And so Bob pulls this band together. And before you think, oh, well, how could that band be any good? I went and saw Foreigner this year. There's only one guy who's the guitar player who wrote most of the songs, but he's not the voice. He's not the drums. He's not the bass player. He's not every other instrument in the band, but let me tell you, Foreigner sounds amazing right now. I mean, spot on amazing, right? And believe me, Foreigner has no problem at all filling up a major arena right now with just that one guy in the band. And Bob is not your average drum player. Once you see Bob play, it's a little hard to see any just average Joe play. And of course, there's a lot of great drummers out there that are great technicians like Bob. And we got some good young guys. The guy that tours with Black Sabbath, who's Rob Zombie's drummer, is Tommy something or other. for my money, that dude is the best drummer on planet Earth. If you want to see the greatest drum solo on planet Earth, go look up the Black Sabbath drum solos for this last couple of years, and you'll see Tommy. He's an Anunnaki, man. I'm telling you, this guy. Just to digress for a moment, well, I've got plenty of room on this cigar. Drum solos have turned into shit, I think, and Bob doesn't even try to do them anymore. But this dude plays this, crazy complex drum solo, and the time signature is he's playing one drum solo. This is kind of what you end up starting out the experience with. And I filmed a couple of these; they're online. But he starts doubling up the drums. So all of a sudden you have two drum solos inside one. And your brain is popping because it's super duper fast anyway, and he doubles it. He double kick drums, he double plays everything. Then he triples it. And so you're sitting there watching 3 drum solos at once. 3 drum solos with a back beat and 2 front beats. I mean, it just gets to a point where you're just, I will not lie, I weeped the first time I saw this, man. I just could not, I got choked up watching this drum solo. It was so fucking amazing. First time I saw it was in Orange County, and I didn't have my phone ready or anything, but then I got invited to the same tour in Hollywood Bowl, and I had my camera ready, man. I nailed this son of a bitch, and it's a mind-blowing experience. It's like Yngwie Malmsteen on a freaking drum set, So what happens is, before this Rat Experience has to play in Los Angeles, I think it's the Key Club. No, not the Key Club, sorry. The Whiskey Go-Go. Key Club is now turned into this get shot by Jay-Z's friends club. He wins this corporate bylaw thing, and so he just changes the name before the tour to say Rat instead of Rat Experience, right? Still in the marquee as Rat Experience because that's how they sold the tickets, so you don't have tickets to say one thing and the band's another thing. But on the stage now, they're Rat. Of course, everyone's up in arms. They think Bobby's an asshole. Some of the fans do. Some of them know what's going on. But it's weird how saying nothing makes you the victor in this world, And what's weird is the fans don't understand that the guy that's bitching and moaning now, Warren DeMartini, is the guy who has kept the band not touring for 4 years. So the reason why no one's seen that band on stage is because of, and they did a little jaunt, I think, in 2013, but they actually had all 4 of the original band members playing for a really short jump, maybe like 3 or 4 concerts, but then it just fizzled out very, very quickly. But now they're back on stage, and I'm telling you, I missed that LA performance. I got sick the night before. Just couldn't stomach going to the club the next day. I was exhausted, but I ate something raw. It fucked me up pretty bad. But yeah, that band is back out now, and so if you see it come through your town, definitely grab tickets because it's a hell of a performance. And from what I understand, the interest in the band is now blown up because they've seen the videos, they've seen the image of the band looking really good, and they've heard the music now live, at least through YouTube, and now they know this is definitely an e-ticket ride. So that's a piece of good news, I think, from the 80s rock side. I do miss the other 2 alternatives, which is when King Crosby died, they brought in Carlos Cavazo, who was the lead guitar player in Quiet Riot. And he's a sweet dude. He's an amazing guitar player. And he and Warren actually played very beautifully. I mean, Warren's fantastic guitar player. And every time I've ever talked to him outside of these corporate meetings, he's been a great guy to me. It breaks my heart that he doesn't want to tour. I don't have anything against him personally, except that he has just been ganking the band. It's really weird. And he's gotten Piercy to the point where Piercy's now publicly announced he'll never tour with the band, which he says every few years. But I just don't think it's ever coming back together again. But, again, the replacements, the lead singer of this Rat Experience, now Rat, is he nails it really well. So, and he looks good on stage. The whole band looks good. It looks like Aerosmith or something, where they didn't lose their image and they didn't lose their ability to make new music for the future. Sort of where Rat is now. So, again, get tickets if you can, and get that book, Tales of a Rat. It's Tales. Yours truly is on the front of the book, and it was written by a guy named Jim Clayton. So I have to give full credit to Jim Clayton for putting this thing together with Bobby, and I just pretty much did the editing of it. And we did move fairly quickly through the book, but Bobby's writing style with Jim is very conversational. And so you really feel like, I'm telling you, if you sat down with Bobby for 2 hours and had a conversation with him, reading this book is exactly like having a conversation with him. And some of the people are these left-brainers who just want to piss on everything. We got these, the only negative comments we ever got was that it didn't feel like a normal book. I was like, who wants that? What do you want, a fucking TV manual from a 80s rocker? No, you want the way the guy would talk to you, right? Right? It's weird. God damn it, this thing's taking a sweet fucking time staying open here. Man, it's crazy. I should just throw it down in this thing. So the wind's starting to pick up a little bit here. Sort of like the Santa Ana winds, it feels like to me. And that's why we have torchy lighters that get around this wind. And, I hear people bitch and moan about smoking in the wind, but only in the last 10 minutes has it really gotten kind of miserable. It's probably about 65 degrees, and with the windshield, it's probably like 58. As far as the cigar goes, unemotional. It's a nice tobacco flavor. Nothing special. I would definitely swap this out for a JM's $2.50 stick any day of the week. And I don't mean to insult this company. I'm sure they make great cigars. Now, when it stays lit, it stays, it's got some definitely good output on the smoke. You can just see it rolling off the end of there. Yeah, so, we're all looking at the music industry and we're deeply saddened. I just watched the VMA Awards? Is that right? I think it's VMA is where the public votes on things, right? It was just amazing, the regurgitated 20-year-old formulas that are on stage now. These project bands where, a shadow group of people write all their music and they're just boy bands or whatever. I think what's funny about bands nowadays is that they know the music isn't that great. They just do. And they're all sort of, and the reason why I say that is because when you look at their stage performances, the more gimmicky a stage performance is, the more that they feel like the music itself isn't really closing the deal, And Coldplay just played on this music awards show, and it was like, I'm not a huge fan of Coldplay because they ripped off Computer Love from Kraftwerk for their first big song. Just put lyrics on top of it's a legacy techno band from Germany called Kraftwerk with a K, which means power plant. And they wrote this song called Computer Love, which I think is off their Numbers album, which is like 1980, 81. And they ripped off the entire song. There's all these mixes online where they show you Computer Love. They play Computer Love, and then they blend it into Coldplay song, and then back to Computer Love. And you can't tell the difference between the two songs. It's okay to take someone's song and make it beautiful with your own lyrics and your own style. No problem with that at all. It was a good song that they did. But when I think the album came out, there was no credit to Kraftwerk. And people were like, the article I read online was that someone actually approached the band and said, obviously you took this from Kraftwerk. Why didn't you credit them? And someone in the band was quoted as saying, why should we give an old, dumb techno band credit for a song? And I'm like, fuck you. You got to be fucking kidding me. You can't write your own melody with your own hook. You steal this to get your career started, and you call them a dumb techno band. It's like, it was just like the lead guitar player for, what the hell's that band that sang Black Hole Sun? Oh, shit. They asked the lead guitar player, well, do you have any influences from the 70s, because you play just like, some of the old classics. And he arrogantly says, no, man, I don't have any influence from anywhere. I made all this by myself, and I never, like, he pretended like he never heard any other music in his life, and I was just like, really? Really? You just sat in a vacuum, and you managed to copy everything that these predecessors had done. Techniques on how to play and all this other stuff. I don't know, maybe he's telling the truth, but Jesus, I just feel like, what are you going to lose credibility if you say you got some influence from Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page? You know, it's like, seems a little odd. The Coldplay plays, and you can't understand any of the lyrics, of course. And they had this crazy, beautiful stage art that was blasting in the background. And visually, the band looked, fairly cool. But then as this huge, profound statement, and again, I sat with some people watching it, and we're all trying to figure out, what is this all about? And he had these monkeys get on stage with him. And the monkey art in the back was phenomenal, like this computer-generated monkey art where someone mocapped a bunch of people dancing and then put it around some really cool, textured, humanoid monkey things. And maybe it was a song about evolution. Shit, I don't know what the hell the song was about. These four monkeys, these four humans dressed in monkey outfits come on stage and start dancing with him, and he starts to kind of cower down in the middle of them, and he's singing it. Everybody in the room is like, are you kidding me? What the hell is this all about, right? And that's where music is gone. It's a gimmicky show without really the core product being memorable. Nobody hums that shit after the performance. You're just kind of like, well, that was sort of entertaining. Believe me, man, people in the 70s and 80s, man, you would catch yourself whistling songs, singing songs, and you've got to go get it and play it, or the song gets stuck in your head for days and days because it's so good, Just think about Hot Blooded, Oh, mess. Yeah, no transit. It's almost flavorless at this point. It's really weird. This will be the longest pointless cigar review I've ever done. I should just edit this thing together into an 8-minute sequence. Wow, this is an hour and 52 minutes at this point, and there's another segment before this that stopped recording. I'm going to predict 10 views. 10 views in 1 year on this particular video. Hopefully the conversation's been worth your while, but I understand if it wasn't. I'm talking to myself at this stage. But I think it's interesting that it was no mystery that the education in the arts was defunded in the 90s, right? And so kids didn't learn how to play instruments. And there is hope. There is hope. There's some kids out there learning how to play guitars. One of the guitar players I love more than ever is a guy named Buckethead. And he's been around for at least 20 years competitively. And he wears a porcelain mask on his face. He's got these really long brown hair. At least I think it's still his hair. And he wears a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket on top of his head, which I know sounds crazy. But I tell you what, if you want to go see a concert that will blow your mind in terms of guitar talent, Buckethead is, maybe the tickets are $15. If you ever see him go through your neighborhood, make the effort to go see this guy, because I've seen him play at the House of Blues in Disneyland, which is outside the park but right next to the park, in downtown Disney, which is a free area you can go to shop. And I just watch guitar players just as near to crying as they possibly could watching this guy do it. And he'll inspire you to try out a guitar. Let me tell you that much. I'm pretty sure he plays a big giant Les Paul, but it might be a Gibson. He plays a few different types of guitars. But this dude, he's got hundreds of albums. I mean, he's just got, not hundreds, but he's got just dozens of albums out there, and they're all of different types. He'll take an album and play a bunch of theme music to his favorite movies and cartoons and stuff, but he just totally pulls it up. He can play the funkiest he can play a bass really funky too, but he plays his guitar in a bass manner, and just kills it. It's very, very entertaining. He actually got started touring with Primus as his major band, because he's just a guitar player, right? But Primus, I don't think is any mystery, is a a band full of extremely talented folks, as unique as they are, and not everyone's cup of tea. When you see them, I don't think he tours with them anymore, but if you ever see those tickets, you definitely buy those tickets. I saw him with part of the Primus band and a guy named called That One Guy. And That One Guy is a very interesting dude who's built this crazy contraption. Almost looks like a washboard pipe thing. There's no washboard on it, but it's like a bunch of pipes, and he's strung all these strings all over the thing with these like a bass drum trigger attached to it and a bunch of other stuff, and he has figured out how to play this thing. He must have been some crazy music student grad who just said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to create something no one's ever heard before, and he succeeded. So this guy opened for Buckethead when I saw him. I think it was 2008, 2009 when I saw him, and just go look him up on YouTube. Just type in Buckethead, all one word, and try to find a video with some good video quality so it doesn't hurt your eyes. And you'll be amazed. You'll be utterly blown away. But this guy's, there's some pictures of him out there from the early 90s, late 80s, so you can actually see his face. But he's a cool looking guy. But he's like 6'6", at least, prior to putting this bucket on his head. So he puts the bucket on his head, he's actually even taller. So he's massive on stage as a human being. And he'll he does sort of like the popping breakdancing while he's playing his guitar every once in a while, and it's very tasteful how he pulls it off. But he'll play his guitar, without picking it at all. So he plays it from the neck, and he hits his like triggers and stuff, and he'll two finger, the whole neck, which is just phenomenal. So you have like your usually it's a 6-string guitar, but he'll two finger 6 strings, and he's blazingly fast and a great musician at the same time. But he likes rap music at the same time. He likes heavy metal, so he's got the sort of funky side to him as well, which is pretty damn cool. So it's definitely something to get into. I'm going to end this baby. I cannot suck on this tasteless stick. I don't know what to give this thing. I would say on a good day a 70 out of 100. Maybe a 65, just based on all the issues. But because it's windy, I'm going to cut it some slack. But I would not buy this again, unfortunately. This particular manufacturer might actually make a better one, but this is not one to pay $10 for. It had an extremely long filler. I mean, this thing has gone 2 hours and some change. I know I've been running my mouth, but if there's any value to it, it's that it's a really long smoke. Absolutely no strength, so that's a positive. But unfortunately, once you taste a cigar, even that JM cigar, man, it had taste. It had flavor to it. And I would just say less is more when it comes to taste in a cigar. And this is more is less, unfortunately. So this is probably my first cigar review where I was sort of not into it. So that's it. So I'm going to bail out, throw this on the ground, wash up, get to work, and I hope you guys enjoyed me blathering on. No offense if you didn't, because this whole thing's been sort of anticlimactic for me too. Anyway, I'll see you in the next review, and over now.